One day, four friends, Emily, Hannah, Jake, and Mike, were tired of crowded ski resorts with their plastic fun and run-down slopes. They longed for the real thing, wild, untouched, dangerous. The Canadian Rocky Mountains beckoned them with rumors of vast, snowy wastelands where no tourist had ever set foot. Places where the wind howls like a lost soul and the trees stand like ancient sentinels. Remembering a time when not only animals, but something else roamed here. They reached the tiny village of Blackstone Creek, the last shred of civilization before the vast emptiness. The locals looked at them with disapproval. "That way?" An old man in a greasy hat muttered hoarsely, pointing a finger with frostbitten joints toward the mountains. "They don't go there in winter." "All the better," laughed Jake, the most reckless of them all. The old man muttered something about white shadow, but the friends were already loading their gear into the snowmobiles. They traveled deeper into the mountains, leaving all traces of man behind. After a few hours of travel, a narrow gorge opened up before them, wedged between the rocks like a giant wound in the body of the earth. "Perfect!" Hannah exclaimed, taking off her glasses. The snow lay here in an unnaturally smooth, almost fluffy layer, as if someone had laid it on purpose. There was almost no wind, but the air was silent, as if before a thunderstorm. They set up camp, 2 tents, a fire pit, and a week's supply of food. The sun had slipped behind the mountain ranges, leaving only a scarlet streak on the horizon, like a trail of blood. Darkness fell too quickly, as if someone had turned out the lights on purpose. They sat around the fire, crackling in the unnatural silence. Even the wind, which had been raging during the day, now lurked, as if afraid to disturb something important. "Damn, it's quiet in here like a coffin," Jake muttered, pouring himself a cup of coffee. His joking tone sounded strained, as if he sensed something was wrong. Emily turned around nervously. "Is it just me, or is someone watching us?" "Watching us?" Hannah looked up sharply. "Do you feel it too?" Mike ran his hand slowly over the back of his head, his hair standing on end, a howl from beneath the ground. Then they heard it, a whisper at first, like someone was breathing right behind them, but when they turned around, there was no one. And then the howl, however, not from above, not from the forest, but from below. A muffled, gurgling sound, as if someone's throat were choking on blood. It came from beneath the snow, from deep in the earth. "What the hell?" Jake jumped up, knocking over his mug. "Maybe it's the wind in the crevasses." Hannah tried to come up with a logical explanation, but her voice shook. "Wind doesn't sound like that," Mike whispered. "Guys, do you see those footprints? It was Hannah who saw them first." She pointed to the snow at the edge of the tent with a trembling hand. "The prints, they're not wolf prints, not bear prints. They're too big, too long. The fingers, if they were fingers, ended in deep furrows, as if something with claws had scraped the ground for a long time before leaving." Is that a human footprint?" Emily covered her mouth with her palm. "No." Jake leaned in, his face white. "Humans don't have claws like that." By then it was dark and the moon hung low over the gorge. It cast a bluish light over the snowy plain. The friends stood startled by the huge footprints, and suddenly they heard a loud rustle behind them, and all turned around together. And in that light stood they, 3 wolves, as if they were not alive. Death itself seemed to have molded them out of shadows and hunger. Ribs protruded from beneath the gray hide, glistening like wet mud. Yellow eyes burned with an unnatural inner fire, as if someone had set fire to the dry grass inside the skulls. "God," Hannah exhaled. The wolves didn't move, didn't growl, just watched. And then the shadows behind the wolves shifted. At first, Emily thought it was a play of light until a huge white mass separated from the darkness. It was a she-wolf of enormous size. The friends couldn't believe their eyes. It stepped out into the moonlight like a ghost, treading silently, despite its monstrous size. Every muscle beneath its snow-white hide shimmered like liquid metal. "It's impossible," Mike whispered. The she-wolf was taller than the biggest bear. The wolf's fur stood on its back and saliva dripped from its open mouth, leaving smoky trails in the snow. And the scariest part was her eyes. They were completely red. She didn't growl. She wasn't glaring. She just studied them, slowly shifting her gaze from one to the other as if choosing which one to start with. Her fangs, long, crooked, yellowish, glistened in the moonlight. They looked old, as if she'd needed them for something other than hunting. One of the gray wolves dived forward, grabbing the edge of the tent with its teeth, the fabric with a loud crack. And then the she-wolf spoke. No, it wasn't a howl. It was a hoarse, guttural sound, almost human, as if someone were trying to speak through the wolf's vocal cords. "Run!" Jake shouted. It was too late, though. The white shadow moved. Blood pounded in their temples, adrenaline burning their nerves. They tried to fight back, but it was like fighting a hurricane. Jake was the first to rush into action. He grabbed a ski pole and swung, but the she-wolf didn't even dodge. Her paw swung with frightening ease, and her claws, long as knives, cut his arm to the bone. He cried out, but the sound was cut short as her jaws snapped at his throat. His eyes rolled back, his body twitching in a final spasm. Mike lunged toward him, but one of the gray wolves leaped at his chest, knocking him to the ground. They rolled in the snow, but the beast was faster. Its teeth sank into Mike's face, tearing his cheek, his nose, his lips. Hannah lunged for the fire, grabbed a burning log, but the second wolf slammed into her shoulder, snapping her neck with a powerful tug. She screamed high, shrill, almost human, when his fangs tore through her tendons. Only Emily stayed on her feet. She ran. Her heart pounded, her legs shook, but fear drove her forward, and behind her, the crunch of bones, the frequent greedy sounds of tearing flesh, and that screech, not animal, no, too much like Hannah's voice. But she didn't turn around. She couldn't. Emily raced through the thicket like a hunted animal. Branches whipped at her face, leaving red streaks. However, she felt no pain, just a chilling terror that clenched her throat. There were sounds behind her, heavy, hoarse breathing, the rustle of paws in the snow, a quiet, almost human laugh. She knew it was following her. When the trees parted and the highway suddenly opened before her, Emily collapsed onto the pavement, sobbing and gasping. The first car that passed by braked sharply. "Good God! What's wrong with you?" The man jumped out of the car, but recoiled when he saw her eyes, wild, mad, full of inhuman horror. She couldn't speak, only wheezed, pointing toward the woods. When the rescuers reached the camp, they threw up. The snow was not white, but brown, soaked red to the ground. The tent was a ragged mess, scattered all over the place, as if something had torn it from the inside on purpose. "It's bones." One of the policemen turned away, gagging. However, the creepiest thing of all, the tiny footprints. Tiny paws mixed in with the red snow. And one, very fresh, a huge wolf's paw print leading back into the forest. No one spoke a word. Only the wind howled in the gorge, just as it had the night before. And in the distance, from deep in the forest, came an answer, but not animal. Almost human, almost mocking. Later, a local hunter told them a legend. 3 years ago, a group of biologists disappeared here. They said they were experimenting with wolf DNA, and one of the females escaped. And now she wasn't just defending her territory, she was feeding her young.